There you go. Caitlin, take it
All
away.
right. I just have to click my recording. Got it. All right. Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and I am working with ArtSnacks for ArtSnacks Quarterly. And um, yeah, my background a little bit, just to give you some context. I went to school for art education, and with that type of curriculum, you basically take studio classes in every discipline. Yeah, I've gotten to do a little bit of everything, and then I've been working as a professional artist for about 10 years. And I still like to work in all different kinds of mediums. I love trying new things, and I was an Art Snack subscriber for a really long time, and then now I've had the opportunity to work with them a few times. So, um, yeah, we're gonna get started with the newest fall quarterly box, and we can go ahead and switch to a top-down view. So I'm a little refresher of what was in the box. We have the set of graphite pencils, the mechanical colored pencils, the set of PanPastels, pencil sharpener, and eraser, and then your pad of paper. And I got the paper in the color sand, and I believe that you might have gotten a different color. And maybe go ahead and like put in chat like what color you got so we can all see the variety in here. Um, and I really just wanted us to go through an exercise that was a little bit like swatching, but then you also got to complete a small piece of artwork while you're testing out your supplies and exploring how they all feel and how they all work. So I really like thumbnailing, and it's also just a really good way to get your ideas out on paper. You can certainly do that by just taking a big sheet of paper and then um, putting in little squares and then thumbnailing out a bunch of squares. I just went ahead and cut my paper into by folding it down each center, and then I just have these little tiny squares. So that's what I'll be using today. And then I have a bigger piece to kind of do a little bit more finished piece um, after I'm done practicing with each supply individually. I also have printed out a photo reference to use. I'm someone that does not always do well when I'm just drawing from inside my brain. I do much better when I have a photo reference or a still life or something to look at in real life to reference. So I'm not very good at just, some people, maybe you've been in an art class before and you're like, oh my gosh, how do they just like draw that from their head? Like I can't do that. And that's okay. I'm like that too. I need a photo reference. So this is a photo reference of a painting from the expressionist artist Emile Nolde. And I actually did like a painting project with this painting where I tried to replicate it exactly to practice painting and practice brushstrokes and kind of learn from art history. So I was reminded so much from the color palette of the PanPastels of this painting that I went ahead and printed it out as my reference. Um, and with it is the artist was an expressionist, so the brush strokes are very expressive and I think lend themselves really well to using something like pastels. Um, so I was really excited about that, and I also printed out just a little bit smaller. This is mostly so I can show it off a little bit better, and then I'll probably just be looking at this one. And I also went ahead and threw a filter on it just on my phone before I printed it out in black and white. And this is to help see the value structure. Again, like there's no shame in like needing like using tools when you're making art. So um, don't think that like you're cheating by like throwing it in the black and white and like making it easier for yourself to look at the value structure. Like that is like always use all the tools you have at hand. Um, so the first thing I'm going to work on is by taking um, one of my smaller sheets of paper, and I will put this as close to the center of the camera for you guys and move some of this other stuff out of the way. And I'm going to be working with the set of graphite pencils. And if you're new to working with art pencils, they are going to have a rating on them, describing what kind of lead they are. So this is mostly so it's going to have H or B's. So B stands for black, I believe. And so it's basically the higher number next to B, that would be the closer to black it will get. And then the H is hardness. And so the harder the pencil is, the lighter the graphite's going to appear on paper. So H pencils are like good for drawing under like a watercolor painting, because it's not like when you're going to use water over it, since it's a harder type lead, it's not going to smear around as much. So that's like a good way to think about how you can use these pencils. But really, a pencil's a pencil. You can use any kind of pencil for any kind of drawing. I typically like using something that's like the HB, because it's just a little bit softer and it allows you to get maybe apply a value structure down on paper quicker. And then the F one can change a little bit brand to brand, but typically it's going to be close to like an HB darkness, but it's going to be a bit firmer, which is like it either stands for firm or for fine point, and you'll be able to sharpen it to a fine point a bit easier than some of the other leads. So those are some little pointers for you if you have never looked up what the meanings on pencils are for. So just wanted to get a rundown. And yeah, I really like when sometimes I've gotten pencils that are like 8B and stuff, and they're really like they can get really dark. They're really similar to charcoal or something at that point. All right, so to get started, I'm going to be looking at the picture I have. Oh, and I wanted to say, like, you can look up this exact painting. It's called Ada in a Green Dress. Yeah, Ada in a Green Dress by Emil Nold. And I can just spell that out for you if you want to look at it. Oops. But if you look up this artist, or if you just type in like expressionist art into Google, I think any painting would be a great reference to use for an exercise like this. Or if this isn't inspiring you when you look at it, look up any photo reference that is inspiring you today. It's not going to be super important what the subject matter is for the exercise. So use whatever you want, use whatever the color palette reminds you of. And yeah, so, okay, but I'm going to be starting with my photo reference in the black and white, because I think that's easier for me to capture and look at the value structure. And I'm going to do it in about the same size that I see here. And how I typically like to start these is just by blocking out the darkest areas first. So like this area around the eye, and then I kind of just work from the inside out. And this is a really good time just to like be really loose and explore a lot with your mark making. You don't have to worry about like only doing hatching or cross hatching or any certain pattern. Just maybe change it up as you go about the drawing to help you explore what type of mark making you are liking best. I also think working from a reference gives a lot of freedom to not have to overthink what you're subject matter is, and just like picking a painting that you like from a museum just really like loosens up the pressure of trying to like come up with something original, and then you can just focus on exploring how the supplies are working. And I'll try to show you guys an up close view every now and then. Okay, so I got some of the main shadows on the face blocked out. And right now I'm feeling like I want to just go ahead and block out some major shapes as I work on the rest of the drawing. I was like, otherwise my proportion is going to be way off, but I'm also not trying to focus too much on getting a perfect proportion. Just wanting to capture the main value structure of the piece. So I'm just blocking out the face shape, the hair. And now I'm going to go back and start blocking in some of those darker areas again. With this exercise, I'm mostly just working with like a messy um, mark making in small circles. And if you hadn't gotten a chance to play with your pencils yet, this would be a good opportunity to just every now and then just pick up a new pencil as you're working and test out the different types of graphite hardness to see how they differ from each other and which ones you're liking. I think I really like the HB one a lot because, like I said, it's just a tad bit darker and is easier to um, get those darker areas down quickly if you're working and like doing thumbnailing kind of like this. Another strategy would be to like start with one of your lighter pencils and then go in and emphasize the darker areas even more. I'm getting close to needing to sharpen my pencil. Go ahead and pause to do that. There we go. Handy pencil sharpener. I really like this one that it has the separate sides for graphite and color. It's really nice. And I got a really nice point on that. Woo. We'll work on this one for a few more minutes before we switch over to the colored pencils. But you can always just, whenever we switch, you can just pause where you're at, and then later, if you have time, you can go and finish it more, or you can just leave it where it is, and it can just be your practice of exploring the supplies in the box.
Hey, Caitlin, this is
Yep.
Lee.
Mm-hmm.
We got someone in the chat. Amelia says, I love that sharpener too. It's one of my faves.
Yep. Super nice and super handy. And I feel like I'm maybe not every sharpener is great, or I'm just a bad pencil sharpener, but I often will break pencils as I'm sharpening them, and that has not happened with this pencil sharpener. So I think that definitely speaks to its quality. Like, I definitely drew this mouth a little bit off center. I'm gonna go in with the eraser. And I find that kneaded erasers, I usually just do more of a tapping motion than a side-to-side motion with erasing, but it can still work with either one. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and then we're going to switch over to playing with our colored pencils. And this was one I did the other day, testing out the same things. I'm going to try to hold them so that my light doesn't pick up the shiny graphite. They're kind of similar. I feel like I was a little bit better with this one, maybe just because I wasn't worried about being on camera. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I think also just being really loose with the supplies, just exploring how they're working. And if you ever don't know like what to do with these kinds of things when you're done, I have trouble filling up sketchbooks, so I just really love to like take these and put them inside of my sketchbook when I'm done. And I will leave these up here so you can see them. If you're still going to work on yours, feel free to switch over to colored pencils or keep working with your graphite pencils. But now I'm going to open up the colored pencils, and I'm just going to go ahead and get them all out of the case here. And so similar to using the graphite pencils, but instead of looking at like big blocks of dark areas and blocking out all of the shading, you're going to be looking at blocking out different colors in whatever you're using for your reference. So I'm first going to go in with red for mine because that's the color that's jumping out to me the most. So I'm just going to go in with that and start in a similar fashion, just sketching out the main color patterns in the piece. I'm actually just going to put these right next to each other so I don't have to glance over too much. I'm just going through first and lightly sketching out some of the main shapes of the face. And blocking out some of the bigger areas of red as I come across them.
So we have a question in the chat from Darla Joe. Do the colored pencils have refill capabilities? Question mark.
I read that they do.
They do. They do.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we're gonna stock the refills, but if you go to zebrapen.com, you can navigate, and they do have refills. I love these colored pencil mechanical pencils. They're especially great when traveling because you don't need to take a sharpener if you don't want to.
I've really, really liked these a lot. I like mechanical pencils like graphite pencils for drawing. So I've really, really liked the colored ones a lot. And I have not broken any lead with them either, and I'm a very heavy-handed so um that is pretty cool. I was a little nervous about that, and they've done really good.
Yeah, just check their website. Like you can get 30 different color refills for like under $7. It's great.
Wow.
And then we got a question from Rodney. Are the lead in the mechanical pencils just colored lead? So I'm just reading from the website. Sensations mechanical colored pencil lead refills are 2 millimeter size. So they're a little bit bigger than standard mechanical pencil color lead. Typically an average mechanical pencil lead is 0.5 is kind of like the average for like a regular mechanical pencil. So these are definitely
Yeah.
a
If you want to
thicker.
see, like, if you don't have one on hand, this is, they look like, you can definitely see it's a lot thicker.
Also, you have kids, they're great for like the car because they don't have to use a sharpener. They're not super, pointy. They're great. Rodney has a follow-up question. What hardness are they? That's a good
You know,
question.
I don't know, but they're like, they're not a, uh, like, okay, I think it was probably several months ago at this point, ArtSnacks featured a Derwent pencil that was, I felt like had more of like an oily type feel. It was really soft. Forget what those ones are called. I would say this one leans more towards a harder colored pencil than one that is going to be like really, really, I don't know, soft, kind of like melty, I want to say. So I don't know exactly, I don't know if they have like an official hardness scale. I know James Burke Creative in his box freestyle described them more as feathery, I think. And I can relate to that as you draw with them. I think they have more of a feathery quality to them. So you're definitely going to be able to get darker colors, like darker pigments. But I think it's easier to use a light hand with these for sure.
Kaylin, you're a little out of focus right there.
Oh, let's see if, hold on, maybe I can get it to, okay, here you go. There we go. And just like with the graphite pencils, like I would switch up your color every now and then, especially if you haven't tested what all of the colored pencil colors look like yet on your toned paper. Um, and it'll be a good reference for if you decide to do more of a finished piece after these thumbnails. You'll be able to reference that to see how each color looks on your shade of toned paper. Okay, I'm gonna jump over to a yellow. And with this, I'm not really trying to mimic any um, brush strokes or anything in the painting like I would if I was trying to duplicate this in paint. Um, really just kind of getting those main colors down. Um, and it's also teaching me a lot about this painting and how the artist is using colors that naturally pull forward and naturally fall back. You notice there isn't really a lot of white in this painting, only right here on the neckline. And so you can tell like the yellow is a color that's naturally going to jump forward a lot and foreground. So he's almost using that as his tint in the painting. And it's a really good, like I feel like after I did this exercise with the colored pencils, I was able to go back and use my PanPastels much more successfully because I was using the yellow that came in our set as kind of the white, if you will. And I was using the purple is a color that's going to naturally fall back. So then kind of using your purple as your black. And I know sometimes if like you're got a new color in your box and maybe it's a color you haven't worked with before, or having such a limited color palette can sometimes be really challenging. So this is a good way to kind of practice and look at another artist that also is using a pretty limited color palette and seeing what colors they use to make dimension.
We got some comments in the chat here. Brandy says, these are great points you were making. I was expecting a creamy feel to the color pencils. I'm super heavy-handed, so it's great to know to be lighter-handed with them, because I didn't fall in love with them. So I will retry with these tips. And then let's see, there's another comment here. Yarrow says the purple color pencil is a lot darker than expected to be based on the pencil case. I guess the
Yeah, the pencil
color that's in
case. Yeah, I mean, this almost looks white on camera. Oh, this is the purple.
yeah.
Um,
Well, that's why you
yeah.
wash them out, right?
Yeah, this one's a lot darker for sure. The blue I found to be pretty similar as well, so it is still pretty dark blue. And we can go ahead and since I know not everyone might not have these on hand, but would want to see. Yeah, purple's a lot darker. It's more what you would expect to be in the set than a pastel purple, I think. but very cool. It's nice to have so many colors to work with. You could really pick any reference and pretty much be set to go. I just switched to my orange one and blocking out some of the orange areas. And I'm not going to be able to get through every single color in this painting for sure. But I want to get a little bit more blocked out before we move on to exploring the PanPastels. So I used to do a lot of hand lettering, and I mostly would use a mechanical pencil for that, because just like a technical pencil lends itself really well to drafting out hand lettering designs. And these would be really good for that because there's certain colors that don't really show up well on scanners, which I would do all of my work in a sketchbook or on like tangible paper first, and then I would scan it in to finish it. And I would have to go in and edit out all of my pencil marks that, I didn't maybe missed with my eraser or were too dark to get rid of at that point. And so using certain, you can look up what colors are best, but I think it's like red and like blue are best for deleting once you put it into a digital file because you can select it easier, or the scanner just can't pick it up as well. And since these are mechanical pencils and are kind of lend themselves better to doing more of a technical drawing, I kind of want to go and see how that would work with drafting up a um, hand lettering design and doing a little scan test. hardly worked on the background at all with this one, but that is okay. I am ready to move on to PanPastels, but first I'll show you, this is the one I did the other day. I got a little bit more of the background blocked out. I think I like the face better in the one I did today. But yeah, really fun. I would struggle without a photo reference to use like this much color in such an expressive way in a painting. So it really helps me to learn from someone else, like where to place those colors when you're looking at a reference. So I will set these here. Maybe I'll keep one of the graphite ones up too, in case you guys are still working on that and want something to look at. And now I'm going to move on to PanPastels. Let me just move these out of the way. Got a lot of supplies in this box.
Caitlin, just a heads up, we're about halfway through this session.
Great. And if you're noticing that the pencils don't fit back into their container, just remember to put the lead all the way back. I definitely made that mistake the first time I was putting them back. All right. Got another piece of paper here, and I'm going to get all of my PanPastel stuff set up. And I'm going to be using like the, I don't know, the makeup brush style sponge today. So that's just the one I found I really prefer. And then if you have paper towel handy, the pastels came with a really great little booklet with kind of it has all of like the colors and some information about the product, but it also shows you how to clean the tools and the pans. You can see like my yellow one's a little bit dirty, not too much, but it'll show you how to get rid of that. And I'll probably be I'll be cleaning my tool a lot during the demo today, but if you need any further demonstration, they have little tiny videos on their website. They're not very long, but if you needed like a more in-depth video on how to clean the pan, it goes over that. But otherwise, that little guide is great. You basically just wipe the pan with a paper towel really lightly, a clean paper towel to get any contaminated color out of it. And then for the soft tools, you just rub it on a paper towel, and that will get rid of the pigment. It'll still look like it has some on there, and maybe it will have a little bit, but it won't really show up once you pick up new color. I also found I did have mine just come out of the ferrule when I was doing it a little too aggressively. So just be careful of that, not be too aggressive with it. I now am just holding on to one side of it and stroking it across so that don't do that. And if you get any little paper towel hairs on it, you can just wipe them off with your hand. I think that's all I wanted to say about the tools before we begin. I also, all of the lids, if you didn't notice, or the pans, they nest into each other. So you can take the lid off and then screw them on and just keep one regular lid and then stack the other ones underneath. If you need a more compact or on the go kind of situation. So in case you didn't know, you can do that. And what I've been doing is I will set them all out, then I'll put my lid up and I'll rest my tool on that when I'm not using it so I don't get the rest of my workspace dirty. So I am going to start out first with the yellow, and blocking out um, the yellow colors I see in the painting. And unlike the graphite or the colored pencils, I am going to be looking a little bit more at mimicking the brush strokes that this piece has because the medium is going to lend itself really well to a painterly style. And I also found that when I was first using these, because this was a new product for me too this month, that when I was getting color onto my sponges, I was like rubbing it around and it was like way too much. And my piece turned out okay, but it was only after like the third or fourth time that I started playing with these that I really got the handle on how um, I should be using them for something like this. And I think like thinking about this being more of a um, paint that you just put on a palette and then dipping your brush into it and not kind of what I was doing was the equivalent of scooping up a huge thing of paint and then going to paint with it on my page. So instead, think of it more just like, okay, I'm just going to tap it on there, like you're dipping it into paint that you just put, and then use it. And then just keep going back and forth like you would with paint. So yeah, I was way too heavy-handed. And I ended up having a lot of dust on my piece, and I was like, hey, I thought these were supposed to be not as dusty. And turns out I had just not mastered them yet. And anytime you need to have a more concentrated color, you can just go back right over that part and um, make it more saturated. And I'm definitely going to be leaving a lot of my paper exposed for this because the tan paper, I kind of need it to fill out my value scale. But these are super buildable. And once you put some down, you can just kind of, I kind of like to put some down and then spread out the shape that I'm drawing. And then if one area, like this is like really, really yellow in this part, and if I spread it out too thin, like too much of the paper is going back, that's where I'll go to first with my next stroke and then kind of fill that out more with pigment. And because these are really, um, what's the word I want to use? They're very like, they're true pigments, and they don't have any like, uh, I don't know, under base pigment, like they are its color, right? So they're not going to become less saturated like the thinner they get. They're going to stay just as saturated. So you can use your paper color to your advantage. Like the more that your paper is showing through, um, the more that you can kind of like lay down a thin color and then visually the pastels and that color are going to mix. But yeah, my first time using these, I think I used them too much like regular pastels, and I had so much more fun with them the more I started to treat them like paint. Also, putting down a thinner layer will be easier to, if you want to use it in combination with your colored pencils. Um, it'll be easier to kind of use those products together if you don't have too thick of a layer of the pastel pigment. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my green color and I'm just going to rub off the yellow onto the paper towel. I am going to be using both sides of this little soft tool, so it probably wouldn't have that much contamination anyway, but just to be safe, since I do use like the pointed tip, I am just going to rub it off really quickly before I go to the next one. And again, I'm just tapping it on. You can kind of see like I'm not getting, like I'm only getting a little bit of color on there, but a little goes a long way with this product. And maybe somebody already noticed, but you're like, Caitlin, we don't have a red pan pastel. How are you going to block out the red area? And I'm just going to use the purple instead. So just work with what you got. And I am definitely going to be focusing mostly on the really dark areas of the red with the purple and then trying to thin it out as I work into some of the parts where it's like a true red. So remember, purple is going to naturally fall back visually. So you can use it as your shade, but this also is a very vibrant purple. So the thicker you lay it on, it is going to get a little bit darker, like how it looks in the pan. But it's never going to become less saturated. So there is a limitation to how dark it's going to be. But this is when, if you're working on your final piece that is using a combination of the supplies, you can go over some of the purple areas with the graphite pencil or one of the colored pencils and alter the saturation. I'm gonna go back and just do a little bit more with the green. And then I'm gonna start working on my piece on just slightly bigger paper that I'm going to use all of the supplies combined. Oh, I said green and I accidentally picked up yellow. All right. All right. So I'm going to pause on this thumbnail here. This is the one I did the other day. You kind of see the difference between the two, or if you just need an example of the different ways it can turn out. This one I went a little bit more heavy-handed, I think, with the pastels, and I like it. But I would say this one's a little bit more ready to combine with some of the other media. So I'm going to put that one right here. And, oh, okay, don't want to grab that one. I do have a finished piece here, but I will grab that towards the end. So for this piece, I just cut a piece of paper in half, so it's just exactly half the size of the paper pad piece. And I need to move this up just a little bit so it's in view. And I'm going to go in first. I'm going to stick with the PanPastels first and block out some colors with that. And what I found myself doing in combination with using these supplies in combination is I went in first with PanPastels, and then I switched to the colored pencils, and then I went back and with the PanPastels to make some areas just a little bit punchier. And then if I wanted to make everything or certain areas look more desaturated, that's when I went in with the graphite pencils. But definitely feel free to use the graphite pencils first if you feel like you want to like sketch out a little bit before you go in with pan pastels. I would recommend using one of the higher hardness ones though, so that it doesn't smear around with the pan pastels as you're using them. So, okay, I'm gonna just get started. Almost really similar to the one I did. This one's just gonna be a little bit bigger um, since it's on a bigger sheet of paper. This really makes me want to pick up a couple more colors of pan pastels to play around with. I don't know about you guys, but um, I've found these to be really fun. I think doing all of like all the steps to an exercise like this in one day might be a little too much if you're finding that that feels too challenging. You're not getting to spend enough on each step. Then maybe try picking one supply each night and then on the final night using all three together. But I think one of those things, like using the same reference each time you go and do this exercise, can be very eye-opening. And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that's kind of like you think you're not doing anything different or you wouldn't have done it differently, but um, it really does make a difference.
Caitlin, it's so quiet.
Sorry, I'm focused.
Oh,
Uh,
so quiet. But that's okay because I think that a lot of other people are hopefully working. I just want to remind everybody that maybe in about 10 to 12 minutes, if people are comfortable, we'll invite you to share what you've made during the session. So just we're not checking homework here, but if you want to share or have any direct questions,
for sure.
feel free to.
I'm gonna go ahead and just switch to the piece that I was working in combination so you can kind of see how all of these can work together. You see the light catching up, that's everywhere that I've put graphite down. And so I'll hold it to the side here so it doesn't catch up as much on that. But you can really see the difference between now that if I put all of these out individually, you can see like the limitations of the value structure you get with these each supply individually, and then like how much deeper of a value structure you get in your piece when you're using the three in combination. So definitely something to think about. You can really see what I was talking about with the purple is that it really is a dark purple, and it's definitely the darkest within this trio. But using it in combination with, the dark purple colored pencil and some of the graphite pencils, you can really deepen the value structure of your whole piece. I also went in, like I said earlier, I did a lot of the pan pastel first, and then I went in with colored pencil and graphite, and then I went back in, especially with the yellow, to really touch on the high points of the face and where I saw um, the colors coming forward in the painting. Um, so you can definitely let me know if you have any questions on this piece too. I didn't do like a full background with it. I um, just kind of worked on it um, until it looked done. But I do think this is really fun to look at the pieces individually and as a combination to see how these supplies can really work together. And here, I'll go ahead and do like a close up. There you go. So you can see too, I was like, it's a pretty expressive mark making with the graphite and um, colored pencils. And something else I played around with in some of these areas here in the background was applying the uh, yellow to like one edge of this tool and then the green to just the other edge, and then stroking them on the paper at the same time to kind of mix them as I painted. And I think it did a really good job of, I was trying to mimic what's going on here with the paint mixing directly on the canvas. Um, and yeah, I think it's a good I don't know, testimony to the original work of what I was trying to capture. And I think again, the pan pastels really lend themselves well to doing something um colorful and expressive with this.
Oh, looks like people are posting images in the chat. I didn't know you could do that. Let's see.
Oh, that's cool.
Dana posted, oh, very, very pretty bird.
Nice. That looks awesome. I've seen so much like wildlife and animal pictures done with pan pastels. Um, And I think that that's so interesting. But I also thought of a bird with these colors. They're like the perfect bird colors.
I'm seeing some other comments here. This is really helpful. Thank you from Dana. And then
Oh, no
Rodney.
problem. Thanks for joining.
Rodney said, PanPastels are so easy and expressive. Very nice. I need to order. And then there's another person working on a bird.
Bird. It really does, like, it reminds me of, I don't know if there's a specific bird it reminds me of. I also really love playing uh I play a bird board game a lot. And so maybe I think I just have birds on the mind with lately with that. But I'll have to look and see. Maybe I'll have to find the bird I'm thinking of and post it on Mix. If I can remember to do that. And then, or this like is reminding, it's giving like Fruit Loops. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's definitely like tropical bird colors. Um,
Absolutely. So we do have some time here. If you want to come on camera and show and talk and ask questions, now would be a good time. You can either turn on your video and raise your hand physically, or I think there's a raise hand button on Zoom that you're able to do. If not, totally fine. Continue to work or whatever. But I am seeing some more comments here in the chat, so let me see if I can move back up here and read those. This was so cool, Caitlin. I haven't used PanPastels before, and you taught me a lot. That's from Amelia. And then Dana says, now that I can get subtle, now that I get how subtle I can be with them, I want more colors. Yeah. Yeah, they have a lot of colors.
yeah.
And then Rodney says, Erin posts a lot of birds. Yeah, a lot of birds. She actually owns birds, so. Angela says, keep forgetting not to put my hand down.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
On the finish.
It's a messy medium a little bit, but you feel like a real artist, you know?
Yes. And then we have some more comments from Yarrow. With traditional pastels, I really struggle with control. I feel like I can get a lot more finer lines and details with PanPastels. Yes. There you go. Look at Paige posted something.
Nice.
Looks like a Jack Skellington
Awesome.
Oz. Very cool. So if you're making anything from this class or anything with your quarterly ArtSnacks box and you have something that you want to share with the ArtSnacks community and not just here, feel free to post it on ArtSnacks Mix. That's one thing about ArtSnacks is we have this great online community, and you'll get a lot of hearts and likes and feedback and comments. So don't be shy. One of the things that we wanted to do is have this shared experience, and I think these live stream sessions are part of it, but also knowing that everyone is getting the same materials in their box as you, then all that matters is you working on your skills, and you don't have to worry about not having the right supplies or the right colors or whatever. So you can just focus on upping your skills. So yeah, love that skull. So cool. Very nice. But let's see if there's anyone has their camera on. Let me scroll through here. We still have about 10 minutes. Caitlin, if you want to go dive back into one of your pieces and do maybe some more detail or whatever
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I did not really finish off the background too much in this, so I can do that. Make sure this comes back into focus here. Get it? Nope. There we go. I know it's like the light reflects off of this a bit, so have to forgive me for that. Also, something I did a lot was I looked at both of these a lot as I was working on this piece because um like it can be like you can kind of get a little too involved with laying down color and forget that you still need to have a value structure. So then like every now and then I'd look at this and be like a kind of checking back to make sure I was still hitting all those high points. And a lot of this is also just mixing the colored pencils as mixing with the pan pastels as I'm working with them. So that was a really fun um, experience, I think. I don't want to call it a surprise because I was like I was hoping that they'd mix well together. And yeah, they really do work really well together. It's been fun. I think the original painting for this was completed with oil paint. And that is also when I did my original exercise with this, I also completed it in oil paint. But something similar with these pan pastels to oil paint is being able to mix like directly on the canvas. So yeah, it lends itself really well to those types of techniques. I'm gonna grab that purple colored pencil. I'm gonna pull out my bigger picture because I can see a little bit more of the brushstroke details and try to add some of those in.
All right, we got a question from Rodney. Do these pan pastels smear or do we need to seal them after we're finished?
Yes, so they do smear. I would treat them like you would treat other chalk pastels. So whatever your preferred method is for that, whether it's um, placing a piece of newsprint over it to help it from smearing if it's being stacked against other papers or inside of a sketchbook. Or you could, I think there are some mediums that you can like paint over it. I would have to, I remember, I know I've seen those before, like a gel medium of some kind. And then there's spray fixative that you could get if you really want to lock it into place. Um, and that's probably the best thing to do. And then if you do the spray fixative, just make sure you read the instructions thoroughly on whatever one you get and use proper ventilation or go outside to do it. Those are my pro tips for fixative. But fixative is basically, if you haven't used it before, it is basically art hairspray. So yep, it's just going to lock everything and spray it on and it locks everything into place.
You could also use hairspray.
You could use hairspray. Yes, I have definitely used hairspray in a pinch.
But not like the new like spritz bottle hairspray. I would recommend like
Like,
the
yeah,
hardcore like Aquanet.
yep.
Like, think 80s hairband.
Right.
So does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions? Now we have just a couple of minutes left. All right, Caitlin, you want to wrap up whenever you're ready? I'm not rushing you off, but
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining in. This was a really fun first stream. I hope that if you hadn't had a chance to really explore everything that was in your box, that this gave you a nice set of time to kind of get to know all of your supplies, or especially if you're new to PanPastels and get you familiar with that. Um, Definitely let me know on Mix if you have any wants for some of the other workshops coming up this quarter. I would like to do some more deep dives on some of the products individually. Um, and then, or if you're really liking using everything in combination, just if you have any kind of wants or anything like that, just you can find me on Mix. I'll definitely post this later, so you can even comment on that post and let me know what you're um, wanting to do with these supplies, or if you have any questions or anything like that. So definitely reach out. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. This was a lot of fun.
thanks, everybody.